Hello, Mr. Lim.
Yeah, hi, I'm here.
Hi, that's good. Then we will just wait for the other three people to join us.
Yeah,
Thank
okay.
you for being here early.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Michael.
Hello.
Hi. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. So thanks for being here early, and I will be the host for today's webinar.
All right.
So then we will have to wait for, okay, oh, I see Mr. Joseph is here. Then we just have one more person to wait for, and we will start exactly at 3 p.m.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, great, sounds good. Hi, Mr. Joseph, can you hear me? I'm sorry, Joseph, I cannot hear you. Did you turn on your microphone? Oh, there we go.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Oh yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, and we're starting with the panel now, or are we starting with the plenary session?
We are starting with the plenary session. There will be 2 plenary sessions for today, and it will take around like 20 minutes, and then we will start with the panel discussion.
Okay, would you like me to turn off my camera until the panel session?
Well, it depends on you, but you might be more comfortable with it off.
Okay, thank
Probably,
you.
yeah. Okay, so thanks everyone for being here early. Oh, hello, Michael. I think your microphone is on. Would you like to mute it into the panel discussion?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. This is Shihan from New Venture Corporation. We are the organizer of Solar Talks webinar, so welcome aboard today. Over the past few years, Thailand has always been one of the hottest solar energy investment destinations in Southeast Asia. In result, the utilization of rooftop areas to install solar energy system also became popular as an alternative business structure and energy source. So during this webinar, speakers will mainly focus on giving depth interpretation of Thailand rooftop solar market and discuss its opportunities and challenges. Now, I would like to give a brief introduction and a big welcome to our speakers for today. They are Mr. Cheong Boon, the Head of Product and Market APAC from Trina Solar. Mr. Jiao Jiang, the Manager of Southeast Asia and Pakistan from Goodwe. Mr. Michael Belov, the country head of Thailand from Cleantech Solar, and Mr. Joseph Tomkiewicz, the partner of TNG. So for today's webinar, we will first start with a 10 minutes plenary speech given by Mr. Lim from Trina Solar, following by another 10 minutes plenary speech given by Mr. Jiao from Goodwe. Then we will invite Mr. Joseph from TNG and Mr. Michael from Cleantech Solar to join them for the following 40 minutes panel discussion. Also, we will introduce the winner for the lottery session after the panel discussion. So please make sure to stay to the end to see if you have won the prize sponsored by Trina and Goodwe. The organizer of today's webinar, New Venture Corporation, is dedicated to supporting key investors and developers for successful development and investment in Asia Pacific renewable energy sector. Our footprints cover Asia Pacific countries such as Vietnam, Thailand, China, Myanmar, Australia, Malaysia, Singapore, and some Middle East countries. So before starting the webinar, I would like to introduce all attendees with some housekeeping notes. If you experience any technical issues or have any questions for speakers, please use the below Q&A box. We will leave the Q&A time after panel discussion. And also we will share the webinar recordings with all attendees by next week through your registration email. So now let's go ahead and handle the microphone to Mr. Lim from Trina Solar. Hello, Mr. Lim.
Yeah, hi.
Please start. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I hope everyone can see my screen. Thank you, New Venture, for organizing this, and thank you to all the attendees for your time and all the speakers for participating in the event today. I'm Lim from Trina Solar. I'm the Product and Marketing Manager for Trina Solar handling Asia Pacific. So I'd like to start off with a short introduction about Trina. So we are founded in 1997 and have been in the solar industry for more than 20 years. So along the way, we have been #1 in 2014, global module shipment world #1. And then we have started our factory operation in Thailand in 2016. And then last year, we have successfully listed ourselves onto the Shanghai Science Tech Innovation Board. So these are the few key milestones that we have in the history of Trina Solar. And then, of course, in terms of our reputation and our branding, we have been a reliable brand and been ranked the top most bankable module supplier 5 years in a row by Bloomberg New Energy Finance. So besides this, at the same time, Trina has been in Asia Pacific for a long time. So over the last 3 years, we have shipped approximately about 8.9 gigawatt in the region, and we are definitely one of the top 3 players for Asia Pacific in terms of module supply. This is just a brief history of how the module have changed over the last 10 years. So now we are in the 2021 time where we are seeing the large modules coming up with power bin 600 watt and above. Now, of course, in terms of the levelized cost of energy, so this is still the main factor for all the PV system that is operating now. So how, from a module supplier perspective, how we can contribute to reduce this levelized cost of energy in terms of our product offering, what we can offer in terms of the power bin and the design. So how this will help to save on the BOS cost to reduce the total cost, and also at the same time, by providing a reliable and good product, we are able to maintain the power generation over the lifetime of the system. So this is the Trina product map for large-scale utility and large-scale rooftops. So since last year, we have launched our 500 watt module using the 210 mm cell size. Along the way, we have also introduced a 550, and then in this year, 2021, will be the 600 watt and above era. So besides the larger footprint modules, we also have the smaller ones. So mainly now we are supplying will be the 400 watt range, which is we have started mass production in February this year. So this is our comprehensive product model list that we have here. So on the top half of the table will be on the 166 mm cell size. So this is mainly power bin ranging from 350 to 450 watt. And then on the lower half of the table will be all our 210 mm cell size. So this basically range from 400 watt all the way to 670 watt. So in terms of the technology wise, it's an integration of a few innovative technology that we have. So on the top left will be in wafer size. So we are using now the largest wafer that's available in the market, 210 for all our new Vertex series. Then also for multi-bus bar, we have started off with the 9-bus bar for 166, and then for the 310, it will be in either 10-bus bar or 12-bus bar, depending on the model. And on the top right is the non-destructive cutting. So basically, if you can see now in the market, most, if not all of the suppliers are using cut cells. So for Trina here, we have upgraded our cutting technology to use the non-destructive cutting, which is essentially a low temperature laser to slice through the cell so that we can get a smooth edge and at the same time maintain a very similar mechanical loading properties as compared to a non-cut full cell. Then on the bottom right will be our high density interconnection technology. So basically this will be targeting to minimize the gap space between each cell to approximately 0.5 mm. So with that, we are able to optimize the overall dimension of the module, and then this will improve the module efficiency by 0.2 to 0.3%. Okay, so just a bit more details on our key products. So we'll start off with the Vertex S, the 400 watt. Mainly this is targeted for the small residential rooftop projects. So you can see here, it makes use of all the technologies that was mentioned in the previous slide. And this is on a 5x12x2 120 cell layout. And this is a 1/3 cut cell. So we have made a lot of studies into how to have a suitable product for residential rooftop, given the space constraint of a small residential rooftop. So we have arrived at the conclusion with a very optimized size that is able to fit nicely into most of the resi rooftop. By having the dimension of 1.75 by 1.09 meters. So you can see here when we put it into a same size rooftop comparison with the other power and different size module, we find that the Vertex S module is able to fit up to 18.23 kilowatt as compared to the others. So it's approximately more than 20% more than the other models or the other power. So this will translate to more energy generation over the lifetime of the system by like 25 years. So next will be our larger footprint modules, which is available in both the bifacial and the monofacial. So we'll look at a 550 watt product. So this you can see here, this is a 5x11 layout. So there's a 5 columns of cell, and also based on the technology mentioned earlier. And this is a low voltage, high current design. So this low voltage, high current design, mainly the key benefits will be that it's able to connect more modules per string and have a higher string power as compared to the others. So this will help us to lower our BOS costs at the system level. So we can look at one particular case study. project configuration, we have chosen Bangkok. No, and we're using 100 kTL inverter. So as we compare against the 3 different power bin, so we have the 500 watt, the 535 watt, and the 545 watt. So this is a 1 megawatt DC project, which is a common size project for Thailand rooftop, based on the DC-AC ratio of 1.2. So you can see here the numbers on the right, the string numbers for a 545 watt Vertex module is only 73 as compared to the others. And our total string power is also higher at 13,625. And you can see that in terms of the mounting structures is also less as compared to the lower power bins. So usually for 1 megawatt DC project, we always break down into a different array because of the orientation of the roof and the roof space. So if we look at a bit more details on a 100 kilowatt AC typical array layout, you will see that by using a higher power bin, we are actually saving more area, and also we are using less strings as compared to the 500 watt and the 535 watt. Then when we go into the more details of a bill of material comparison, then you will see for this 100 kilowatt AC array, essentially first we have the number of modules will be less, and then the connectors, the cables, the mounting structures will all be less as compared to the 500 watt or the 535 watt. So when we put this all together into the total 1 megawatt DC project analysis, then we can see that the savings coming from the mounting, the cables, and some of the connectors. So this is on the right is the chart showing that the difference in the BOS cost. Of course, this is based on certain assumptions, and also this is only reflecting the items that is related on the module. So essentially, it's on the DC side of the system. So for this low voltage, high current module, it's something that is different that we see in the market now. So one of the concern will be on the high current of the module. So we have worked with various major inverter suppliers, especially on the right, the string inverter suppliers. So we have all the top brands that will have the compatible models that is able to handle this higher current from these Vertex modules. So overall, Trina is very optimistic about the 210 cell technology and our Vertex series. So we are aggressively expanding our capacity to support this industry change to a higher power bin modules and a larger wafer size. So overall, we have 4 factories in China and 2 factories overseas that will be supporting the Vertex production. So as a conclusion, maybe I will just show some reference project where we can deploy the Vertex modules. So we have the residential where we can make up the installation on the rooftop. So with a higher power bin and optimized dimension, this actually allows the smaller resi rooftop to maximize the system installation, size installation. Of course, in terms of the commercial industrial rooftop, then we can choose 500 watt or the 550 watt, depending on the overall project requirement. And lastly, of course, these high power modules are also very suitable to be used for large security projects. So we have been supplying these high power modules to projects all over the world. So last slide, this is our Trina Vertex family. So basically we are covering from the left to the right. We have the 400 watt, 500 watt, and the 550 watt, which is mainly targeted for rooftop application. And then for the 600 watt and 670 watt will be mainly for the ground mounted utility projects installation. Yeah, thank you very much for your time. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lim, for your informative sharing. And now let's give a big welcome to our second speaker for today, Mr. Jiao from Goodwe, to give his plenary speech. Hi, Mr. Jiao.
Hi.
Yeah,
Yeah.
please go. Yeah.
Good afternoon. I will share my screen now.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay, so
Okay.
everybody can see my screen now.
Yeah, looks great.
Okay, great. I will start.
Thank you.
So about the Thailand solar energy, my title of topic of today's speech is about moving towards a brighter future. Okay, first of all, I will generally give a brief idea and information of my company. Goodwi is a public and global presence company now, and we have two headquarters in China, and we have a regional headquarters in Germany, and we have 3 R&D center in China, and we have total more than 20 gigawatt production capacity, and we have about more than 400 people and engineers. They only focus on R&D and technical. We have more than 20 local offices and 5 local repair centers, including Thailand and Vietnam and Malaysia. Okay. And we have a global calling center. Goodwi, we have this picture. We listed most of our good awards from the third-party organizations, including IHS or UPD, okay, TUV Rhineland, and Wood Magazine. And we have Red Art, which is granted us a very special award for our good design of our inverters outshape. And this year we have a very proud declaration that we are the only company of inverter company. We have 6 countries offer us the UPD, the top brand. Okay, we are the only company which we have 6 countries. And this picture showed our global cooperation, okay, and our best business partner. And we already declare that Goodwi will have a special relationship with GE, and in the future, Goodwi teams, including myself, we will selling not only Goodwi brand but also the GE brand of the PV inverters to everybody. And Goodwi's future development strategy is about, we will focus on the solar inverter. This is our traditional business, and we focus on our solar plus the hybrid storage. Even we already promote our Goodwi O brand of the lithium battery since this year. And we will have all-in-one services. We call it smart energy management. And from now, we will show you some pictures about our project, some real projects which use Goodwi's inverters, especially in Southeast Asia. Okay, here in Thailand, we have an airbase 2 megawatt project. Okay, in India, it's a Siemens, and in Vietnam, okay, you see bright future, very bright pictures, and in Vietnam, and in India, Coca-Cola's plant, and in Netherlands, and in China, Shanxi, okay, and about the Goodwi CNI solutions, now we have 2 major of the product series. We call it MT series and the HT series, okay? And both of them are selling very good in the whole global scale. And we have different power capacity, okay? Different power capacity. And we upgrade the MPPT numbers from 4 up to 12. And so I will keep on focus introducing about the HT product because it's integrated with plenty of the latest technology of the inverter industry. And at our HT products, we have redundant protections, okay, including AC relay, okay, and DSP CPLD chips level, and we can save in the cable saving, because we have the bigger diameter of the plugs, so which is supported the aluminum cable compared with the traditional copper cable. We can save in the money. And operation level monitoring, okay. Even each MPPT units, we have 2 sensors from input and output to collect the information, okay. And very easy to do the maintenance. Even if our inverter can get the power supply from the grid, so which means the workers can give the maintenance in the night. to light up the inverter in the night. And with the excellent heat control design, so it will present a very long-term generation, lifetime, and reliable quality than ever expected, because you see the reasonable heat dispatching path, the very good design, and with very powerful and long life 6-fan set. So which means the result is, considering even the environment temperature at 50 centigrade degrees, but the inverter still can operate and output at about 200 kilowatt. And in standard, like 60 or 36 centigrade degrees, and the inverter's power output can achieve 250 kilowatt. And in this picture, because people just like plenty of people already know that the PV modules is getting bigger and bigger, and the PV modules like 182 or 210 different new generation PV modules, they will generate bigger power. But with the Goodwill HT inverters, compared with a traditional other brand or traditional last generation inverters, our DC-AC ratio could achieve 1.5 and another one 1.3. Yes, so you can see it's the bigger input power of the pines and the bigger dispatch pine compared with the small one. And for safety and the protection reasons, we integrate the Type 2 as the AC SPD chips and Type 3 protection from SPD, and which is integrated in the communication board. Most of the other brands probably they will not consider it about communication board, but we make sure the safety of the inverters and keep working of the inverters. So we integrate a communication board with SPD level 3 protection, and in SPD DC side we have the Type 2. And we also integrated a very reasonable and high technology like Type 2 SPD. Okay, I already mentioned, and we have operational emergency power off, which means in standard CNI project, if some emergency situation happened, you can using just one button to press and to shut down everything. And the system can be configured up to 40 inverters. Okay, the inverters, they can communication between each other and getting shut down together. And we have very excellent performance. We call it AFCI, the second generation. Regarding to our testing and third party certification, our AFCI scanning level could achieve more than 90%, which means most of the arcs happened can be scanned and reported by our inverters, which will very, very safety for the PV panels and the subarray panels, panel subarray. And we also integrated the AC terminal temperature detection. Okay, from my experience, I think this is also the only company we do this. And the HT product has a bigger range of from startup and from the shutdown. You see, we can start up the inverters in the morning, especially typically at 200 voltage and shut down at 180. So with the longer scale of the operation times could generate more and more power for our end users. And in our HT products, we integrated AC terminals, which means like the tracing system, normally they will installing communication and controlling devices, which need to getting power from the AC power. But actually, our inverters already integrated AC terminal, which means our inverters could provide the power directly to the tracing system. replace the traditional power supply devices. It means saving the cost. And also we offer our IS485 port for communication, which means the inverters can controlling or collecting the information of the tracing system's working situation. And we have IP66 protection for the whole machine and IP68 protection for the external cooling fans. Okay. And SVG, okay, good. We also integrate a very important function with IGBT chips, which can achieve the SVG in the night. Okay, and a very good, very fast reaction. Okay, and it can filtering 50% of the harmonic harmonic waves, and with our SVG integration, which means the customer can save in the cost for the invest of the SVG cabinet, which is from my experience, which is not a low cost. Sometimes SVG cabinet is very expensive, saving the cost again. And we have this is for how to say the water floating projects design. So we integrate all our solutions in one. Okay, inverters and weathering monitoring, transmission, transformers. We can integrate and offering our customer as package solution. And HT products can started and running the IV diagnosis to diagnosis the PV systems working situation, and very easy to working because very easy to operation with a one button start and saving the cost of our labors. Online detection, okay, and maximal, for example, 100 megawatts power plant, the whole detection time is less than 30 minutes. This is a diagnosis working situation, working real situation. And good, we have very modified communication port like a USB port. Okay, it can very easy to connect it with our smart devices, Wi-Fi, Solar Go. They are totally good with invention, computer plus the LAN cable, and you can using the USB flash drive to upgrade the inverter's firmware. And we support the IS485, which is a very standard and ordinary communication port. Can communicate with the EasyLog Pro, which is our communication devices, SCB3000, SEC1000, and it can, with the IS485, it can achieve the hands-in-hands connection between two inverters. And only if your third-party devices which support the Modbus RTU protocol, then that third-party devices can communicate with our inverters. And with IS485, we can achieve the emergency power off. And with the power line communication, the PLC, it also supports the power line communication. Okay, in here, connected from the transformer, and transformer connected with SCB3000 boxes. Consider it if you have a large PV power utility, and you different subarrays has a long distance. So consider it this kind of situation. If you still need to communicate for each other, you can using power line communication plus optical fiber ring. Okay, the different SCB3000 boxes, they can communicate with the fiber ring because the fiber ring speed is much higher. Okay, and with the SCB3000 box, you can connect it with the weather station, the weather monitoring devices, and connect it with our GoodWe monitoring system. We call it SIMS portal. It's totally programmed and generated by GoodWe's, our own engineers. And you can also, we also support the third-party monitoring platform only if your third-party monitoring system supports the API protocol. Okay, thanks everybody about your time to listening about my presentation. I want to thanks everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Joe, for your great presentation. And now let's move to the panel discussion session with the topic Rooftop Solar Map in Thailand, Opportunities versus Challenges. So let's welcome back Mr. Lim, Mr. Joe, and welcome Mr. Michael from Cleantech Solar and Mr. Joseph from TNG to join us. So now I will go ahead and hand the microphone to Mr. Joseph. He will be the moderator for today's panel discussion.
Good afternoon, Miranda. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Mr. Joseph.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction. I would like to start the panel first by thanking Neo Ventures for having this today. Obviously, Neo Ventures has put together an excellent panel. We obviously first heard from Mr. Lim at Trina Solar, and I think there were some excellent statistics and some excellent material in that presentation. Topmost bankable supplier, it was a very interesting thing to note for me. And then the size of the wafer that they're using was really some interesting technology, and I was glad to see Bangkok facilities here. We moved on to Mr. Gel, and also had some very interesting information, talked a little bit about the airbase here in Thailand, of which we're glad to see, and a series of interesting technologies I'd like to learn more about, the lower startup voltages and some of the communications and monitoring systems. Those are interesting. We'll be hearing from Michael Beloff here, and he can introduce himself shortly, but let me introduce myself. My name is Joe Tomkowitz. I'm with the law firm of Telecky & Gibbons. We are Thailand's oldest law firm, and we have offices throughout Asia. I'm the head of our energy practice with my co-chair, Kunsupasit Bunsunong, and we do quite a lot of solar work in Thailand, Myanmar, Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. But I think what we've heard today from both Trina and GoodWe is a really good example of companies that have gotten in early and are doing fantastic work in the area. And my questions today are designed a little more to hear the exchange between Jel and Michael. So Michael, if you don't mind, and if you'd like to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about clean tech, you can do that. But I did want to start with the first question. And I wanted to ask you to maybe set the stage, if you could share your ideas about some of the biggest opportunities and some of the biggest challenges here in Thailand. Could you do that for us, Michael?
Yeah, hi, Joseph. Thanks very much. Thanks for everybody. Thanks for Neo Ventures for hosting this. So yeah, just maybe as a short introduction. So Cleantech Solar is a developer and IPP in the commercial and industrial sector for projects in Southeast Asia. So we started the company about 6 years ago and has grown to about 500 megawatts worth of signed projects throughout Asia. I was there from the beginning, specifically in Thailand. We entered the market about 5 years ago, and at that time it was quite a small market. The prices for electricity was quite low, and then saw a significant growth from there on. So happy to say that it's been one of our successful markets, behind India. Actually, it's the number 2 market for our organization, and we're heading towards about 70 megawatts worth of deployed capacity over towards the end of the year. So maybe with that as a short introduction, I'd be happy to address some of the questions that have coming out. So specifically with regards to opportunities and some of the challenges. So I would say Thailand is quite an interesting market in that when we entered the market about 5 years ago, it was a market with quite a lot of experience. They were just coming off of the back of the ADA program. There was a lot of many installation companies that knew exactly what solar was, how to do solar, and that's in pretty big contrast to some of the other countries in the region. However, the thing that was maybe missing at that time was the experience specifically for rooftops. And since then, of course, things have gotten a lot better. But what you have to look at is and understand is the history of sort of the progression to really understand where we are. And that sort of is the cusp of the discussion on these questions. So specifically, for example, in terms of opportunities, so Thailand has quite a very big, significant industrial base. Now that lends itself to, of course, having many opportunities, many rooftops to actually address. It's one of the sort of the top countries in terms of industrials. But not only that, not only the rooftop space itself, it's actually a home to a slew of many leading companies, the companies that sort of have a very clear sustainability agenda, companies that are part of RE100, and companies that have set very clear sustainability goals in order to address sort of climate change and just the requirements to be green and for whatever goals they have within. So that lends itself to an opportunity and sort of shaping the market. So we have seen very high adoption from the leading multinational corporations in terms of going after solar. And likewise, I think that is also shaping the rest of the industry as well. You have other companies that are sort of maybe not really addressing or going after solar due to sustainability, but more for economic reasons, starting to enter the market and starting to show interest as well. So the market has really took off as a result of that. So I would say that that's a pretty big opportunity in itself to just address these number of companies. The other thing that is, I would say, an opportunity and sort of a benefit of the market, if you will, is there is regulation in place. All right. So once again, if you contrast this to some of the other markets in the region, maybe you don't have such a situation in other markets, but in Thailand, all the regulations are in place now. And this sort of leads on towards the challenges as well, that even though you have the regulations in place, a lot of the time, the regulations are sort of a legacy from the days of the Adder program or some of the other, they had a 100 megawatt rooftop program. So it's almost like a shoehorned regulation that's put in place to address this sort of natural demand from multinationals to go after solar. So I'd say that would be one of the challenges in terms of how to actually shape the regulation for the future. And probably the biggest one that I see in terms of some of the challenges is looking into the future, because what ends up happening is solar will be a major mix, part of the major mix for the energy sources. It's not there yet, but how do you actually move from rooftop onto open access type of installation, of power wheeling installation, where you have an installation on the ground, but you're still feeding the CNI customers. So I think that will be one of the challenges sort of for the regulators to resolve in the upcoming short while.
Well, thanks for that, Michael. I mean, there's a lot of content in there, and usually when I speak with you guys, and as we did in our prep session, it's sometimes we cover several areas, but regulations are in place, and that shoehorning is underway, and so I understand that completely. But thank you very much for your overview. Maybe Mr. Lim, we could go over to you. I know you had a chance to speak, and you told us a lot about the company, but we didn't get really into the specifics of Thailand, and you have some properties here already. So could you share with us your views on the opportunities and the challenges you've experienced, or your team and your staff have experienced while they've been here?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Joseph. I think Michael has brought a few very good points. So I think in terms of the challenges itself, for the Thailand policy, whether is it gonna be still a self-consumption kind of model, or will there be any future consideration to switch to net metering? So because there are a few different kind of models that is operating around the world. So I think in terms of first, the country policy for solar might evolve, and how the different opportunities are there for all the different developers. Then besides this, I think if you look at in terms of the single size project kind of capacity, usually the larger scale rooftop projects do have quite a complex kind of approval process. So maybe that might also be a challenge, for some of the developers to navigate this complicated application process. So this might be also something that we can look at on how to simplify the process so that the adoption rate of the solar rooftop will be even bigger. Then I think in terms of the short-term challenges, maybe given the current solar industry fluctuation, as we see over the last, I think 2 to 3 quarters, in terms of the supply, the pricing, there's quite a bit of fluctuation that's happening now in the solar industry. So this might be a short-term challenge to the developers and the owners that's looking at to build the solar rooftop in Thailand. Yeah, thanks.
Mr. Lim, I'd be curious, I mean, has that supply chain issue or has the supply issue been a result of COVID, or was that already an issue prior to 2020 and maybe late 2019? Were you seeing supply challenges, or is this strictly a COVID issue?
No, I think that the supply chain issue started in 2020. So for the whole of last year, it was quite the fluctuation is very big. So yeah.
Yeah, well, good. And it's obvious when you start talking about locations both in China and your 2 outside of China, you're obviously trying to remain flexible and have supply in various locations. So I can understand how Trina's learning from those lessons of 2020, and it's pretty nimble, quick behavior that you guys are demonstrating. So, Mr. Gell, I know you gave us also a very nice presentation on your products and the lines, but you have a global position that I think these other gentlemen also have on the call, but I wanted to ask you specifically, are the challenges and opportunities you're seeing in Thailand, are they similar to your other locations, or are they different? And if they're different, maybe you could point out some of the differences.
Thanks, Joseph, for your questions. And I think like Michael and Mr. Lim's speech, these words, I think we have the common ideas about Thailand's situation. So I'm not going to repeat their words. But consider it about we watch in some other Southeast Asia countries, SEA countries, for example, like Vietnam and Malaysia. Plenty of the bigger, large power utility were developing even in the last year under the COVID-19 or COVID situation. But Thailand's large utility is very, very limited. Okay, but the CNI projects are running very good, still very good. But for the residential installation, we know that the government of Thailand, they are not allowed to feed the power to the grid. So compare with other countries, so we can say probably the government is still have their thoughts. But for the opportunity, we still are feeling strong opportunity in Thailand because Thailand's business and the installation projects are more and more, like Michael already mentioned, Joseph, you already mentioned that regulation, okay? And I think the PEA and the MEA, these 2 certification centers also works and provides their efficiency and efforts. But on the other side, because GoodWe is a company not only focused on the on-grid business, but we also focus on the storage business. Okay, our hybrid inverters are top 1 of the whole global. In here, since this year, and the lithium's batteries cost, the suppliers price offering is decreasing very sharply, which means in the future, the lithium battery plus in a hybrid and a storage inverter solution will be more and more popular in the Southeast Asia countries, which are suffering some poor power grid situation. Sometimes the power suspended. So that's it. I think the opportunities and the challenges both.
That's a great point. That's a great point, Gell. I mean, you look at storage versus getting into the grid, and they almost have to exist together to develop the technology so quickly. And you would wish here we could get some better idea of how quickly the grid, you could tie into it a little easier and the regulations could lighten up. But hopefully what that does is increases in awareness of storage. But both of them need to go hand in hand, and I appreciate your bringing that up here as a challenge, and I'm sure you see it regionally, and I'm sure in Myanmar, Pakistan, and other markets, it's a similar issue. Is storage is becoming an essential
Yes,
element.
exactly.
Yeah. Let me go back to Michael. Michael, we talked about this before a little bit, and I think you brought it up. You know, you said the rooftop history was missing a little bit when you started to come here, and I think we agree on that. It's been developing. I think you also complimented Thailand on its immense rooftop capabilities, both in the industrial and the commercial residential areas. I'm curious, we didn't talk in specifics about challenges or opportunities. Are you finding that there's a good understanding between the developers and the owners on putting installations on rooftops or even on ground? And are the laws flexible enough to make this an easy part of the process, or is this a challenging part of the process for you?
Sure. So thanks for the question. So I think there's almost two parts to that particular question. So if you look at it strictly from the point of view of let's say a developer or project owner such as ourselves and the property owner, let's say you're doing a rooftop project. Now, definitely there has been I would say a very steep learning curve in terms of sort of making sure that the industry adopts a bankable PPA, if you will, a power purchase agreement. And I think that's been one of the challenges in that, because when when we entered Thailand and when the industry was just starting up, there was no such understanding. So what we saw initially was we talked to customers and maybe there was not a clear understanding of the rules, regulations, risks, risk sharing and things like that, as would typically go on a PPA. We had to walk away from some projects where clients were insisting on sort of certain contractual frameworks. So that has been a challenging situation, but I would say it has really improved, especially over the last 2 years when the market has really exploded. So that's looking from the sort of the developer to the building owner. There's definitely challenges there, and I think this is where having like a very clear understanding of risks and maybe the legal framework and how things need to be done is very beneficial for for all the parties involved. Now looking at sort of the second part of the question, if you look at it specifically from the regulatory framework or from the legal framework with regards to the country itself. So I mentioned earlier that sort of all the pieces of the puzzle are there. Now, just because the pieces of the puzzle are there does not mean that it's an easy puzzle, and that's a little bit of a case with Thailand, in that we know how many permits to get, we know the process of the permits, but you have to go every step of the way in order to get these permits, and if you sort of slip and don't do things properly, then you kind of get stuck along the way. And once again, it's a kind of situation where a couple of years ago we've seen these horror cases where clients, developers would enter into agreements and then the projects would just get stuck along the way. That has since improved tremendously. We've also seen significant improvement in responsiveness from the utility companies, from the regulators as well, with regards to sort of understanding the business model a lot better and being able to sort of I won't say adapt, but basically be a little bit more responsive in terms of applications and things like that, so to help projects move along. So that definitely has been sort of a positive force in the country, but it's not, I wouldn't say it's easy. So there's definitely a process in place, but it's just something that takes a little bit of an experience to get through this regulatory environment.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a great point, Michael. I think the bankable PPA is obviously one, but I think what you're doing is making the case to hire more lawyers. And I'm joking a little bit because I'm at a law firm, but it is really true, is you really have to systematically approach these steps or it will be frustrating. And so I think part of this is having milestones that are somewhat flexible in the construction contracts, and having the ability to have a good contracting team in your in-house staff. And I know Clean Tech, and I know the guys at GoodWe and both Trina, you guys are very established and have very sophisticated staffs, and you do a good job teaching. And I think that's essential here, is that companies with patience meet with the regulators patiently and walk through these steps. Otherwise, it can result in situations like you said. So I really appreciate your comments on that. Maybe I'll shift over to Mr. Lim again and give you the hard question. You're the smart guy and the math guy of the three here. So I wanted to ask a little bit about economics. The ministry, or the energy ministry here in Thailand, on rooftop solar has its plans. There is the question that I think Michael raised and both of you have alluded to about feeding back into the grid, and what's the market going to be and what the rates are going to be. And I see plan members 1.68 baht per kilowatt hour per unit. How do I start the discussion with you, Mr. Lim? Is the rate here, the kilowatt rate here in Thailand comparable? Is it meaningful? Without tying in, is it irrelevant? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, thanks, Joseph. I think first, of course, when there is a feed available, is always a good news for the industry. Right. So yeah, so I mean, having a 1.68 baht per kilowatt hour, I think this is also a sign from the authorities that they are actively supporting the solar industry, and it should be a motivating factor to let more people explore the solar opportunities in Thailand. Then in terms of this 1.68 baht rate, if you look at it in terms of USD, it will be about 0.053 per kilowatt hour. So this rate itself, I think is a pretty good number. Of course, if we look at other countries in ASEAN, maybe let's say in Vietnam or in Sri Lanka, the feed is even higher. But that's a different case because they might not have as long history of solar developments like Thailand. But overall, this 1.68 baht rate, I think, is still a quite attractive number for most of the developers. And I think going forward, this will definitely be a good, I think, catalyst for more projects to come up. Yeah.
Well, great. And I'm sort of hoping you say that because I'm very pro-Thailand, but I think, the story's evolving here between these questions is we have sort of overcome a lot of the early challenges in contracting and setting up. We have, self-consumption models that are being contemplated. We'd like to tie into the grid, but, the bankable PPA, Michael and his crew are working on getting that together. So are you guys. Clearly the technology is in place and you guys have brought it to Thailand and you're making it competitive and reasonable and accessible, and you have new technologies. Maybe I can check this first. Maybe I should check with Miranda. Miranda, how are we doing on time? And if you can hear me, just interrupt. We doing okay here?
Yeah, you're doing good on time. I would say you have 10 more minutes, 5 to 10 more minutes. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, we have about 2 hours of material we can do, and these guys can talk forever, but we'll try and do 10 minutes. Jill, I wanted to ask you, Mr. Jill, the power development plan from 2018, I guess, from a little while ago, and this gives us a little flexibility, 12.75 megawatts by 2037. How am I supposed to feel about that? Is that underestimated, over? Is that just right? What do you think on that?
Yeah, I think the global situation now. China already published our carbon neutral targets up to 2060. The China, such big country, will achieve the carbon neutral. So I suppose the Thailand government declare new projects for a long term is totally reasonable. Okay, but regarding to my understanding, I think probably in the first several years since this year, probably the speed of this kind of program will not so faster, but I think the accelerating will be step by step. So finally, I'm totally optimistic about Thailand people and the government could achieve that target from my personal idea. So regarding if that happens, that for every companies, including the EPC company and module company, PV module company, and our inverter company, we have facing big and much more bigger opportunities here. Yes, we have to prepare our products, prepare our teams, and prepare our service for Thailand. That is what I'm going to say.
Well, I mean, obviously, we're all jealous of China's capability to do massive projects quickly, and the growth profile is extraordinary. So, you know, we congratulate you on your part that you're playing here, but I think it's important that we have folks like you commenting on the Thai market, because you're probably getting very good at predicting and doing business planning on these models. I think comments that both Lim and Michael have made have showed what the barriers or what the obstacles are, but I tend to agree with you. I think these numbers will be met and exceeded, and I think the 2025 to 2030 time period will be very important as you guys get the costs of this equipment down even just a little lower. We peg that rate good, and we start building these projects at a larger and larger capability, both rooftop and ground. And so maybe, Jill, I'll switch over to Michael and ask him a question. I know, again, some of my statistics are a little old, Michael. I think it's said that, you know, 95% of the solar here was produced from ground-based, and I think that's old statistics. But can you give us an idea in terms of numbers? I know you talk in terms of theory and philosophy above in your first response back, but can you show us the direction that's going if we're all market speculators and we want to invest in one company versus another, or the ground or the rooftop? You know, what are you seeing, and why is that transition, or why is that delta occurring and switching?
Sure. Very good question. So first of all, I'd like to just maybe mention, I agree with Mr. Jiang with regards to the overarching trend. I think that's very important. I mean, the trend is extremely positive for Thailand, and for us, it's as I mentioned, it's the second biggest market, and we're very optimistic on Thailand. Now, you know, if you look at where
I keep on interrupting you guys to say, is it the sun? I mean, is part of this Thailand's a good market for solar, or am I oversimplifying here? Because I know we experienced in last year's bid round in Myanmar a very pragmatic identification of differing rates as you went from north to south, and as the sun intensity changed, and it was a very visible solar observation there. Is some of that going on here, or am I oversimplifying it?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. So the way we look at projects is, you know, and it's a very, it's a very particular sweet spot, if you will, right? So you have to look at things like how much sunshine you get, what is the financial, or I should say economic framework within the country, because that determines sort of the risk factors of the country, the risk factors of the companies you're selling electricity to. In our case, for example, what is the regulatory framework? You know, so all of these things come together sort of in a sweet spot, if you will. Now, Thailand is not unique. There's some other countries that also have this. But if you put together the fact that, you know, you have such a huge industrial base, you know, it just makes things very, very nice for, you know, for the market itself. So that's why, you know, we're very bullish on Thailand. And, you know, just to sort of extend it towards the original question when you're asking me is it 95%. So I think that probably has been the case maybe about 2 years ago, up to 2 years ago, definitely because of the sort of the adder program. And at that time, there was very little other kinds of installation, namely rooftops. But, you know, what we've seen maybe the sort of last 2.5 years ago is probably a couple 100 megawatts worth of installations coming online in terms of rooftops. It's extremely hard to say what exactly that number is, because, you know, a lot of times these deals are private. Actually, one of the best indicators to do is just to go to Google Earth and to see your satellite maps, and you can scroll down in history and it'll tell you which areas have been solarized and not. So you do have very big development happening in the country, but it may still remain. So when I say 95%, you're referring specifically to rooftops. So it may remain over the long term around this figure. Now, specifically for the following reasons, right? What we see happening in the market is there are floating PV installations that are sort of coming on the horizon. Now, those are, you can say, pretty much ground mount installations. They're very similar as well. They're not on rooftops. In some cases, it's behind the meter, but I know EGAT has been running a few tenders already for floating systems. So there's definitely areas there. But over the long term, and we see this in other markets like India, eventually there's so much pressure that builds up from the industrial base, the sort of the multinational corporations. We believe they'll be the sort of the driving force, asking the regulators to introduce the change. To power 100% of their facilities through renewable energy, that there will be a change in the market whereby there will be a lot more ground mount installation once again. Now, the electricity may end up not being fed directly into the utility, but maybe going through the utility into the end customer. But probably it will still remain that the majority of installations will be on the ground mount. And we see this happening in India as well. We sort of went through a phase of ground mount, then rooftops, and now once again the market has opened up, and you have a lot of ground mounts where you feed the electricity through the utility into the commercial and industrial sector. So I think Thailand will follow that particular path as well.
Well, I mean, that's a great point. You can't feed the grid. You've raised it again. I think you've all discussed it. When that gets resolved, I think it makes the situation much more fluid. But until then, I think we'll have to do this. I think I'm going to honor Miranda's comments to us about 10 minutes. So Lim and Jel, I think we'll skip those last questions we had prepared for. But I did notice we have 4 questions online. Peter Ling, Will Wang, Dharmarendra Kumar has 2 there. I think we answered some of these, so I'm going to pick 1 or 2 of these out, and I'm going to look at Will Wang. What is the rooftop solar policy and future plan for development of rooftop solar and solar? I think we answered that in Thailand. The currently installed capacity of rooftop solar in Thailand, I don't think we attached a megawattage to that. I don't know if anyone knows that particular answer, so I apologize for that. But Miranda, I think we've covered the questions and answers in the box, and if we did not, I apologize. I'm looking in the chat room right now, and I don't see any questions for Jel or for Lim or for Michael. I appreciate having 3 of the best companies in solar in the world here today to talk to us and get us oriented. I'm sure these people would love to hear from you if you didn't get a chance to ask a question. So Michael and Jel and Lim are good guys, and you can probably reach out through Neo Ventures to get in touch with them. But Miranda, I think I've covered everything from this end. Unless you think I've missed something, you can let me know.
Thank you so much, Joseph. So yeah, everything looks good. And for the questions that were not answered, don't worry about it. Our staff has already recorded all the questions, so we will send them to you after the panel discussion to see if anyone wants to answer it. Yeah, and thank you again, everyone. Thank you, Joseph, Michael, and Joe and Lim for giving us such a great panel discussion. It's very informative. And now let's move on to the lottery session. Hold on, let me share my screen. Okay, so here are the, So here are the gift cards winner for today. They are Gopal Modi from Blue Sky Energy, Norman from Embassy of Malaysia, Heidi Yuki from Blue Leaf Energy, Just from USAID Clean Power Asia, Chirapat from SCG CBM Regional, Sawat from Tractable Engineering Limited, Supichaya from EGCO, and Jacobo from Solventia Solar, Anaya from IDI Infrastructures, and Daniel from Precision Control Thailand. So thank you again, everyone, for joining today's webinar, and we appreciate all speakers' great support and valuable comments for this market. If you have any additional questions that were not answered during the webinar, please do feel free to send your questions to our email address showing on the slide right now. And I will sum up the questions to the speakers. And also we will share the recordings of today's webinar to your registration email by next week. Thanks again, everyone, for attending the webinar today. We will see you next time.